During meditation, when one phenomenon tends to come up strongly and repeatedly after several acknowledgments, is it okay to perhaps with gentle effort break away from it, especially if one has seen dukkha in it? Or is it more important to stay with it until one can clearly see its passing away? Well, I think it depends, because you may have something like a itch or a pain that'll come and it'll stay there, and you could be noting it for a very long time, and then it won't go away, saying you just go back to rising, falling. Gentle effort, break away from it. But I don't know. I don't know what that means, to break away from
it. I would say stay until it's passing away, always, because that makes you see something very important in the entire process of arising and ceasing. When you've, in that example of an itch, for example, a scratch, or try to focus on something else, then you miss you miss probably that you are having a wanting in your mind, a wanting to scratch, and that there is eventually I shouldn't say that word, that there is probably the after the wanting the intent not to move the arm, and that there might arise the anger about the itch because you don't want to move. And if you turn your mind, your focus away from that because you have enough of it, then you will not understand that it has passed away already when you start having a wanting. It might, the feeling of the itch might come back. You may think yet that you are still feeling the itching, but that's not true. It was feeling the itching, then next present moment was wanting something, then the itching became most prominent again, then anger arose. So don't go over these things by break away from them.
Well said. The only thing is that most of the time it doesn't work that way. For especially beginner meditators, you will scratch, and when you have pain, you will move, and when you have lots of thoughts, you will or whatever you will find yourself avoiding them and running away from them. So it's also important for us to know how to deal with that when it occurs. So when you're scratching something, even Mahatsi Sayadaw, he explained it exactly like that, but he said if you do scratch, if you don't, and then acknowledge it, and eventually the itching will go away. But if you do, just do it slowly, rubbing, and so on. Be mindful of it, lifting, or even wanting, then raising. If you want to move, say wanting to move, and then lifting your foot and moving it, and so on. Saying lifting, moving. Mindful of every movement, every motion. If you want to shift your posture, or sit up straight, or slouch back down, or so on, then be mindful of that as well. If you find your head nodding down, bring it back up, raising, and so on. So the best thing is to be able to stay with the object. But it may be that you aren't able to. Another thing, there are cases where you might not want to focus on it for a long time, and that can be where it becomes obsessive. For example, you hear a sound, and you hear construction, for example. There's a lot of Jens is now in his cave, and there's construction right out front, and so in the beginning you say hearing, hearing, but your mind keeps going back to it, and your mind keeps getting frustrated about it, and every time it goes back, it's like more and more agitation and more stress. And in that instance, you might be, quite a bit better off to ignore it. Once you say hearing, to put it aside and try to make a conscious effort to focus instead on the rising and the falling and build up your concentration. Go back to it only when it becomes prominent. Not sitting there and every time you hear the noise, oh, here it is again, hearing, because the noise will be constant and it will come back again and again and again. So it's important not to be pedantic about the noting, that you have to note everything, you have to catch everything. You don't really. You have to be present and you have to be mindful. And if it's a continuous experience, in the case of sound, or in the case, say, of your fan, suppose you're in a room and there's the fan blowing on you. Well, you don't have to be mindful of it every time. You can. And even when you're hearing something, you can stay with it. But I think it comes back to the idea of being skillful and learning when to roll with the punches and how to cut your losses and so on, and not be the perfect meditator, not expect that you should be the perfect meditator, because you won't be the perfect meditator, at least not for a long, long, long time.